I am Don Tess, better known as the Dawn of Beer.
And I'm Em Sauter, better known as Pints and Panels.
Welcome to episode 84 of the All About Beer podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk with leading experts and take a deep dive into one topic in beer. This week on the show, we're going to talk about Double IPA. Double the flavor, double the fun. But first, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to support this show and others. Speaking of supporting the show, it is getting to the end of the year and we are actively seeking sponsors to help us pay for producing this show through 2026. If you are interested in reaching thoughtful brewers and curious beer drinkers through advertising, or if you know someone who is, please email us podcast@allaboutbeer.com. To produce a good show, we limit the number of advertising slots available, so please reach out soon. If we don't get sufficient support, unfortunately, the show will need to go on hiatus. So again, reach out soon. Please, again, email us, podcast@allaboutbeer.com to learn more. So, Em,
Yes,
do you like a big, bold double IPA or are you more like a session
I
person?
sure do. I find that I really gravitate towards them after like a super long day. Like
Yeah.
the kind of double, like I want a double IPA when you're like, I've been on my feet all day, I've been working, I've been like out, I've been like running around. I just want to like lay down, put my feet up, and have one beer, maybe two. Maybe two, probably just one. I think double IPAs are like perfect for that. What about you?
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Just given the intensity, it's kind of they're contemplative beers for me. They're not the beers I want to have, when I'm out with friends.
Hmm.
That there I want something more sessionable, I guess. And so yeah, this is a good end of the day, you know, mark the bifurcate between work and pleasure, I guess.
Yeah,
Did you like my use of the word bifurcate there?
I'm really proud of, I'm
Um,
really proud of you.
well, on this episode, we have two award-winning brewers to tell us how they approach the beer, and really look forward to the conversation. But first, if you would like to help support the All About Beer podcast, please reach out to podcast@allaboutbeer.com. Speaking of supporting the show, here is a word from our sponsors.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Still family owned, operated, and argued over.
Hey friends, this is Andy Crouch at All About Beer. Let's take a second to thank our friends at Human Robot in Philly for their support of All About Beer. As one of our newest underwriters, Human Robot shows that it loves great words and pictures about beer as much as 10-ounce milk tubes of Czech-style Mliko pours, something they invented. With their focus on classic styles and most importantly great lager beer, Human Robot has understandably made a great name for itself. Join me in celebrating their luscious lagers and fine ales. And also, join Human Robot and the more than 25 other sponsors as part of the All About Beer community.
Matt Cole is the co-founder and brewmaster at Fatheads Brewery in Ohio, a graduate of Brew Lab at the University of Sunderland, UK, and the Cybele Institute of Technology. He is a 30-plus year veteran in the industry. Since opening Fatheads in 2009, Matt's beers have earned 55 World Beer Cup and Great American Beer Festival awards, including Brewery of the Year in the 15,001 to 100,000 barrel category at the 2025 Great American Beer Festival. Welcome to the show, Matt.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, so there are about a bazillion, that's a technical number, a bazillion variations of IPA these days. So how do you approach designing an imperial IPA? How do you think of it differently from regular IPA? Like, is it just regular IPA but bigger? And then, I think there's been some shifting in style. So how do you make sure it's different from hazy IPA?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I look back at the style, it really is one of those styles that has evolved dramatically over the last 10 years. Um, and it's become, I'm going to call it a little leaner,
Oh,
a little bit, when I say leaner, meaning it's there's been a handful of things that I from grain to glass, I think that have completely changed as the craft brewing industry has evolved. So, I could kind of shoot out a lot of different things of when we won quite a few awards with our hop juju back in 2014, 15, 16, back in those days, maybe even 13. But back 10 plus years ago, it was maybe a little bit different of a machine than what it is today. So I really think that it boils down to, I guess, at the end of the day, is drinkability. I feel like the goal has been to try to make beer brighter, more a little bit more heavy on the tail end additions, and definitely a little bit. I won't obviously it's not the phrase sessionable, but definitely something that that is I would say drier and
Oh,
a little less caramely sweet and not as abrasively bitter and all those things that basically have just their goal has been to try to increase drinkability, and I think that's what we've accomplished as craft brewers over the last 10 or 12 years. So for us it's been analyzing all steps and ingredients and fine tuning the processes to achieve that goal of the ultimate drinkability in the style. So I guess in a sense, I mean, I could go through and just kind of explain to you that I think it starts with, I think the water profile has become less, has become less of emphasis on the dry, bitter side of it, and maybe a little bit more on the rounding side of it with more calcium chloride and a little less of the sulfate. I think we've seen malts that have gone from, I mean, back in the day, we would use Maris Otter and we were trying to drive a lot of multi-malt into the beer. Where today you'll see guys that are, even ourselves, we're using more leaner malts, more Pilsner malts, some two-row, much less dextrin, much almost no crystal malts, where before you were always looking for some more glassy malts that gave you a little bit more body and mouthfeel. I look back in 2003 when the style first started, and the terminal gravities have went from 3+ to 5, and now they've gone as low as 2 up to 4. So there's been this trend of less malt, drier, crisper, leaner, more tail end heavy. You're seeing guys that are fermenting cooler now than what they used to.
mm,
You're seeing, I think we're seeing, longer mashes that are creating, drier mouthfeels. And I think that you're seeing some guys that are switching from, classic ale, California ale yeast to lager yeast.
mm.
So there's a ton of things that have just really changed. The addition of the development of a lot of pourables and these hop alternatives, and this opportunity to get to reduce plant matter and increase yields. But really, at the end of the day, it's like trying to sift through all this vegetative matter and not get these stewed like hop flavors with a brighter, crisper finish. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but there is so many things that have changed in the last 10 or 12 years as far as the style goes. And I think as craft brewers, I think we've actually taken a style that was so aggressive and in your face, and was something that was, I would call, a sipper, to now more of a style that you can clearly maybe enjoy a couple of them and not get satiated, and not bogged down with just such an intense hop profile.
Yeah, okay. That was a lot, and that was awesome. I love that.
All right.
And I agree with a whole bunch of what you said there, particularly the less aggressive nature of Imperial IPA now. So then, where is the line between an IPA or even a pale ale, which I would also argue are quote unquote sessionable? How do you make an Imperial IPA that is different from those other two styles?
Yeah. Well, there's no question that the amount of hops that continue to go into these beers are extreme. And I think more than any of those other styles you mentioned, they become extremely tail end heavy, meaning copious quantities of whirlpool hops. Obviously, in the last, maybe not the last 10 years, but obviously cooling the wort, in order to reduce the isoalpha and capture more of those essential oils, I think is obviously critical. So that seems to be a very fundamental step, is cooling the wort. We even do that in our big brewery. I think that excessive dry hopping is still a big part of that. So I think the opportunity to use everything that you have in your arsenal, whether it is a pourable, a Dynabose, a Salvo Flex, a Spectrum, an Incognito, any of those, and then using cryo and a lot of these concentrated hops to try to reduce I call them speed bumps. There's so much to sift through when you're hopping beers this heavy. Our brewery, we use a hop back, which is kind of unique. There's not a ton of breweries that use that last. We actually heat exchange to the whirlpool, and then after a steep in the whirlpool, then we actually go to the hop back, and a portion of the wort then runs through the hop back through whole flower. We've tried it without, and we just don't get the same results. So that's something that's kind of unique to us, but I do think it adds another element of hop flavor and a touch of aroma as well. So, there's a lot of things that I think, makes it a little bit different. I would say, instead of, by today's standard, if I had to say, what is a supercharged version would it be a West Coast, or would it be an American style IPA? I would say this probably leans more towards a West Coast style that's been imperialized, more so than an American IPA, American style IPA. So, it really is, letting the hops steal the show and having a lean enough profile to carry it through from start to finish.
Okay.
So you touched on hops being the star of the show, which is totally accurate. Um, but what hops do you like to use for this style? And then are there different hops used for different parts of the brewing process?
That's a good question. So we lean on all of our hop forward beers for the most part with some CO2 hop extract. For the first couple editions, we use a Pato extract, and we actually use some Centennial extract. So those would be our first two major additions, I would say, at beginning of the boil, and then at 45 minutes. And then for us in this particular beer, we use a fair amount of Strata, a fair amount of Citra, Simcoe. Our cryo versions are Mosaic and Columbus. And so a lot of it is layered. So we blend a lot of hops together at various stages. And, the goal is to add hop complexity and make it multidimensional.
Great.
Cool. Earlier you touched upon, some brewers are using lager yeast, some are using ale yeast and fermenting it earlier. How do you approach it? And if you are sometimes using a lager yeast in an IPA style beer, when would you do that? Why? What's the thought process of, okay, this is the yeast I want to use for this beer?
I mean, our house yeast is still California ale, so the beer that won was a California ale. I think I brought that up because some of my networking through guys in the industry that are really making some amazing hop forward beers. I've noticed that there is a trend towards more lager usage. My former brewer, Mike Hunsinger, at Grains of Wrath, all of their hoppy beers now are all lagers, and they captured some metals in pale and IPA and at GABF. So it goes to show you that the yeast is just there to kind of like create that really clean platform, and it might even be better than dealing with a little higher level of esters and fruit character that comes from the yeast, and just letting the hops kind of go start to finish. If there's one thing that I can say, as time has gone on, we've definitely walked back the fermentation temperatures. So, we ferment much colder. Almost, we begin our fermentations almost to the point where our California ale yeast doesn't want to work. So we slow it down in the low 60s. The goal is to, really, really eliminate any potential for fusel alcohol, and so that it doesn't, get hot and solvent or anything like that. So I would suggest anybody that's experimenting with imperial IPA and using a maybe anything that's more of a neutral yeast, ferments in the lower 60s, and avoid going in real warm. And then after you get about probably about 3/4 of the way through fermentation, setting that controller back up to 68 or something, so you get past VDK and let it free rise up to those temperatures. It definitely seems to have a cleaner flavor profile that allows the hops to kind of do their thing.
Cool.
So, I mean, you've been brewing this for a while. I want to apologize for everyone who's been listening. Everyone knows I have a cold. If you can't tell. I guess what I'd love to know is you've watched this style change a lot. You've been in the beer industry for a while. What do you think the future is of double IPA? Or I guess where would you like to take it if you could take it anywhere? Like,
Well,
I know that's very open-ended.
To
no, it
infinity and
is,
beyond.
we've actually really pulled back on our. It's just, I don't want to say it's, I think the consumers' palates have changed a little bit, and there's definitely, we all know there's more of a trend towards more sessionable beers. So these aren't beers that really sell super well for us, to be honest with you. They have a good following. We hardly can them anymore, because of the fact, I mean, I think it's economics too. They're kind of expensive to make, so we have to, unfortunately, to get that right price, they're at a premium, and our yields are very poor, so they're just they're a tough sell. They're best, I think, suited to be served fresh and served from your taps, right on premise. The future is, I think it's bright for the style for sure, but I think you're going to start to see the gravities actually come down a little bit. We've actually walked ours back from 9.5 to, the low 8s.
Huh.
And I think you're starting to see, lower starting gravities, lower terminal gravities, a less emphasis on bitterness. Like I said, more tail end heavy, and I think it's, I think there is a trend of making these just not such monsters that they used to be.
And you like that? Like you're happy with that,
Um,
or it is what it is?
I think it makes for a more drinkable beer.
Yeah.
I think it does. Yeah. Yeah. I think, when you start getting up into the, 20 Plato range for starting gravities, that's a lot of sugar. I think, starting smaller and ending a little bit drier. It's kind of similar to what I think has happened with, West Coast IPA, where leaner, and super tail end heavy. And I almost, I think it's a good thing to have, make these so they're a little bit more sessionable, even though they're not sessionable beers.
Yeah.
You're not going to get like bogged down by just drinking one. You can have a few of them, and I think that should be the goal.
I challenge you to enter Hop Juju in the session IPA category next year. Obviously, a lot of our listeners, they're curious drinkers, but we do have a lot of professional brewers and home brewers listening. So, what would you say are the easiest, quote unquote, low hanging fruit kind of tips that you could give to brewers to make better imperial IPA?
So yeah, that's another really good question. I believe that you have to have a little bit of willpower to start with that lean malt profile. Be very conscientious of not adding a lot of crystal malts and sweeter malts. They tend to want to battle with the hops a little bit, and it's pretty easy to throw it out of balance, I think. I think the idea of reducing some of the actual just raw bitterness of the beer, I think is quite important. Um, Gosh, blending, I think hops is something that can really make your beer, unique, and don't be afraid to just, blend 3 and 4 different varietals together in different incremental, percentages to, have this complex hop profile that is going to be unique to your brewery and your operation. I think that's an important thing. And when it boils right down to it, I mean, even though I'm talking about trying to lean up a beer, I mean, we're still at 5 pounds per barrel. I mean, this is a lot of hops that go into producing these beers. So, and a lot of it is definitely going to be in the dry hop portion of it. We rouse our hops pretty aggressively. We ferment them at fermentation temperature. So we don't try to cool, the tank or anything like that to precipitate yeast or whatever we need to do. I think there actually a small incremental amount of yeast actually helps with some of that little bit of biotransformation. And so I think aggressively rousing our hops is something that we definitely do. We like to, I think I learned that from some dude named Vinny a long time ago, where
Never heard of him.
Never heard of
yeah,
him.
me neither. Yeah. No, but I mean, his thing, I remember him years ago telling me, it really boils down to time and temperature and contact when it comes to hops. And then you can even go farther where it's like pH, and you can get really deep into it. But I really think that's part of it is, time and temperature and contact. So, we can control the time, we can control the temperature, but throwing those hops back up into suspension and getting them back in with the surface area of the beer is ultimately going to, make them pop more. They're not any good just sitting in the bottom of the tank, right? So if we can suspend them and get them back up into suspension, that tends to work really good for aromatics. So I think in a lot of ways, to win a medal at JBF or World Beer Cup, you have to have a banging aroma. And the only way you get that is by throwing a lot at it, and at a warm temperature, and really putting them back up in suspension.
Yeah. You mentioned blending hop varieties, but also earlier you mentioned using pourables, and you mentioned in your hop back you use whole leaf. How important is it to mix up hop products, I guess?
Well, I mean, everybody's brewery is different, so everybody's approach is going to be different. You kind of have to figure out what works for you. We use a little bit of we use Salvo, we've used Dynaboost. I know a lot of guys are just using different kind of terps and things like that, but I think that you have to find that right balance that works from an economic standpoint, but also has the biggest impact on your brewery. And for us, it really, the things that we do are not necessarily economically driven. We always, my mentality here as the owner of this brewery has been, I'm going to make the beer the way I like to drink it, and I'm going to figure out how to make it work on paper after the fact. Probably a bad business model, but we throw a lot of hops at late in the boil and things like that. And the idea is just, we want it to stand out. And the only way we can do that is, by more. But we also, I've had a lot of heavily hot beers that, they become very vegetative, they become very stewed. There's a lot of, you can just taste that, the chlorophyll and this vegetative, almost like cooked kind of character that comes from excessive amounts of plant matter. So I think the idea between the CO2 hop extracts and the pourables is really to reduce plant matter to get a brighter finished product, as well as cryo and those other concentrated hops that are available.
Yeah. Great. As a consumer, I appreciate you making an economic beer for me to drink. Before we let you go, can you share social media handles?
Yeah, our social media handles are just Fatheads Beer. I believe that's for Instagram, and uh, gosh, all of them basically
Oh,
are just Fatheads Beer.
awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you, Matt. Really appreciate you giving us all this information.
Oh, thanks so much for having us on the show, and let's keep the spirit of Double IPA going.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
And we'll be
Take
right
care.
back with Stefan Weber after a word from our sponsors.
Hey friends, this is Andy Crouch at All About Beer. Let's take a second to thank our friends at Human Robot in Philly for their support of All About Beer. As one of our newest underwriters, Human Robot shows that it loves great words and pictures about beer as much as 10-ounce milk tubes of Czech-style Mliko pours, something they invented. With their focus on classic styles and most importantly great lager beer, Human Robot has understandably made a great name for itself. Join me in celebrating their luscious lagers and fine ales. And also, join Human Robot and the more than 25 other sponsors as part of the All About Beer community.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, still family-owned, operated, and argued over.
Stefan Weber is the head brewer and one of the co-founders of Everywhere in Orange, California. He's been a professional brewer since 2011. He spent over 8 years at the brewery in Placentia, California, where he held various production roles, including production manager. Over the past 3 years, Stefan has focused on hop-forward beers while building and mentoring the Everywhere production team. His work has earned multiple awards on behalf of Everywhere, including World Beer Cup, Great American Beer Festival medals, and ultimately being named both Brewery and Brewer of the Year at the 2024 Great American Beer Festival. Welcome to the show, Stefan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So we are excited to talk to you because Everywhere Brewing took gold at the most recent GABF 2025 for Juicy or Hazy Imperial IPA. You did that with your beer Tracing the Departed. So there was 126 entries in this category. It's a tough category to win, and you did it. So let's start with the broad question. How do you approach designing a beer of this style? How do you think of it differently from a regular hazy IPA? How do you think of it differently from a West Coast IPA? How do you think about this?
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, we definitely approach it different than West Coast and Hazy Single. It is its own unique style, and there are certain things that you need to pay attention to make it enjoyable and make it work. I think that when you do have higher ABV, you do risk coming across as a little bit too sweet or maybe a little bit too strong. So finding a way to balance all that and get the right amount of bitterness, the right amount of hop aroma and complexity as well. And also playing with that alcohol and playing with that sweetness and finding a way to make it all work together and be enjoyable and not being too much or too intense.
So it's funny that you mentioned higher alcohol. Like there was a time when people were chasing higher alcohol, both brewers and consumers. But as you're kind of implying, that's not always conducive to the best flavor. So how do you think about alcohol? You mentioned playing with it. And then how do you balance that out? And what do you think is a good sweet spot for alcohol content?
Gotcha. Yeah, so that's a good point. I do find that a lot of consumers do want a touch more alcohol. I think they feel like they're getting a little more bang for their buck. But there's also a lot of people, myself included, that want to see it a little bit lower. I think that it's a little more enjoyable. I think it works better. And honestly, high ABV sometimes it just gets in the way and causes problems. So finding that sweet spot for sure. I typically go low on everything. We do about 8% to 8.2% on hazy double, and it works well for us. I've had really great examples from other breweries that are pushing 9%, and while I think they're delicious and work well, I think that a little bit lower, I find it more enjoyable, and I think it works for us. I would say hazy beers versus clear hoppy beers, I do go a little bit higher. On a West Coast beer, I'm going to shoot way lower. in ABV and be on that
Oh,
low end of the range. But for hazies, I find that being a little higher in ABV does help impart haze. And I find
oh.
lower ABV hazy beers typically don't have as much haze stability. And the higher ABV ones do. That's why when you see like a hazy pale ale, it's hard to make it exceptionally hazy. Hazy doubles, hazy triples, etc., just typically have a really solid haze to them. So I do go a touch higher than I would like on hazies, and that's the main reason. As well as I think the hazy beer drinkers kind of enjoying that. But
Mhm.
again, finding a balance between it all and overall not going too high.
Um, there's a theory that I have heard that higher ABV beers do better in competitions. Do you when you're entering a competition, do you think about that, or do you just let the chips fall where they may?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think about that. I do see that trend. I noticed that in hazy beer and clear hoppy beer as well. That being said, I don't really worry about that. We make the beers the way we like to make them and the way we like to drink them, and kind of just cross our fingers and hope the judges feel the same way.
So there was a time, oh, excuse me. I am coming down with a little bit of a cold, everybody. So I just want to, if I cough and honk, I just wanted to warn everybody. So yeah, there was a time that brewers, when they were bragging, they'd be bragging about double dry hop, triple dry hop, gajillion dry hop, all this shit.
Sure.
How do you think about hopping a beer like this? Do you think that like with like kettle, whirlpool, excuse me, dry, like when's the sweet spot and like how much do you like I'm sure this is something that you probably that keeps you up at night. I'm just assuming.
For sure. No, I mean, trying to make hazy IPAs that people are going to want to drink and buy is does keep me up at night. I think it's hazy's harder than anything for some reason because the drinkers are so particular and there's so many different approaches. So yeah, I mean, I do think about that. When it comes to hazy, I do hop them much heavier than other hoppy beers we produce. Again, I think that really helps contribute that stable haze, and as well as that the intense aromatics that people want, and as well as kind of finding that balance between being juicy and sweet, but also having a little bit of hop saturation and being a little bit intense at the same time. So I think we do double dry hop everything that we make,
Okay.
whether that's on the label or not. That there's other factors
Sure.
there. So typically a double dry hop beer is going to cost a little bit more. So uh, I'm able to put a higher volume in and go a little more intense. Uh, but even if we don't put double dry hop on the label, I'm still dry hopping in two stages because I think we get more hop aromatics and more hop intensity.
And are you doing anything in the whirlpool or kettle, or is it just strictly the DDH?
No, so we still do hop pretty significantly hot side as well.
Okay.
We will do the pretty much the largest hop dose we can in the whirlpool, but unfortunately that's less than a pound per barrel on our system. So I like to spread out any remainder hops I have that would be in that. Usually we're doing about 16 pounds per in the whirlpool, which would be about 0.75 pounds per barrel. And since I have around 6 pounds remaining from the 22-pound bag equivalent, we'll put that into the boil. And that's where I really play around with these beers to get that bitterness just right, because I do think they need a little bit of actual IBU hot side bitterness. Uh, but I think finding that sweet spot is kind of the trick. So when we first started, we were doing as much in the whirlpool as possible and then put a little bit at the end of the boil. And then we found that they were actually a little bit too sweet, didn't have the right balance. So we kind of would bump those up to 5 minutes, then ultimately bump those up to 10 minutes until we found the spot that worked well. So targeting around 10 to 15 IBUs from the hot side, and then getting the rest of that bitterness just from, polyphenol hop character from the dry hop.
And then, so I know there's like a running joke that everyone's just Citra Mosaic, which you could be doing, but it's just totally fine. I love those. What hops do you use in your hazies? What hops do you like to use in your hazies and why?
So Mosaic's actually one I pretty much avoid. I don't think it
Oh,
really
Oh,
oh,
hot
works.
whoa,
take.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why, but it never works very well for us.
Okay.
I think the one hazy beer that we made since we started that wasn't very hazy was a all mosaic beer. And I kind of assumed that might be part of it. Granted, I understand that's probably not true because there's breweries making awesome hazies with 100% mosaic. So that's probably not actually the case. But ever since then, I've been a little more skeptical. I also find that the hop character, I don't really like it as much in hazy, juicy. I don't really call them juicy, but in hazy IPAs. So we lean pretty hard into Citra in the kettle, and then I like to incorporate pretty much something from New Zealand in every hoppy hazy beer we do. So I think New Zealand the New Zealand hops play really well hot side, and you get really good character from either like Nelson or Waka Nectaron in the whirlpool that you don't get by just using it in the dry hop. And then when it comes to dry hopping, we'll do kind of just whatever we're going for in the beer, whether it's New Zealand heavy or more of a Pacific Northwest vibe, but typically a pretty heavy dose of Citra, and then blend in something else with a little more character, a little something that's unique and fun, as well as some New Zealand stuff that gives it that really intense, fun, fruity, sometimes grassy character that plays well with everything else.
Um,
Right.
you mentioned that you don't like the word juicy, and
Hmm.
I thought that was kind of interesting. I personally have thought the hazes I've been having have like there's been maybe a movement away from juicy as a flavor in hazies. Do you agree, or what don't you like about the word juicy?
So I think that again, like I think I've said this a few times, but it's finding that balance between bitterness, hop saturation, as well as fruit. But I think that when they're really low bitterness and there's no hops added hot side and it's all dry hop, you're leaning into a lot of yeast character, playing with biotransformation, and maybe a lighter dry hop. You're going to get this really fruity, juicy character that is nice, but sometimes a little cloying and one dimensional. So, kind of finding that balance between getting that fruity, tropical, juicy character, but then balancing that out with a little bit of bitterness, a nice water profile that has uh, a little bit of sulfate, even a little bit of chloride. You get a little bit of like this like salty note, um, as well as yeah, kind of, and then dry hopping it pretty heavy so that it balances out that juicy fruit as well. So our beers definitely have that, and they are really fruity and really tropical, but they're also hoppy, intense, punchy, and balanced.
Um, I like that hoppy, intense, balanced because the those things seem to kind of contradict each other in a way, but that's the magic, right? Is to be able to do all of that.
Definitely.
Um, can we talk about advanced hop products? I know that
Sure.
the hop companies have been doing a lot of innovation there. How do you like them? Do you hate them? How do you work with those?
I do really like them, and we play with them a fair amount, but I actually don't utilize them too much in hazy beers. I like the beer that we're talking about today was 100% T90. It didn't have cryo, it didn't have any advanced flowable anything added. So yeah, I think on hazies we do lean like pretty much just T90 and occasionally a little bit of cryo. Some of our other beers, like West Coast, where we're going for I guess something a little different, we will play with Dynaboost in the at the knockout and maybe some hyper boost or abstracts. But yeah, I would say we've done a few we've gotten a few hazy golds in the last couple of years, and they've all been 100% T90.
And is there a reason you prefer T90 over T45?
Just what I'm used to using. We've
Okay.
used T45 a couple of times, and it's been fine. But I mean, honestly, I think we just have a formula that's working for us, and T90 just does the trick.
I get, you mentioned earlier a little bit about, biotransformation and whatever, and I am not a brewer, of course, but I always wonder if there's something magical in that in the difference between a 45 and a 90 that, you know, yeast can play with, or something happens in there, but you're not finding that specifically, or
I mean, I think we are. So we do shoot when we do the double dry hop. The first dry hop is intentionally done with a little bit of fermentation still happening. So about one Plato before terminal. And that combined with about 1 pound per barrel of T90 gets us that right amount of fruit. And I think that the fermentation happening with the T90 just amplifies all the flavors instead of just being this one-dimensional pop pellet character. So I can't speak to it being specifically the T90 or the 45 or maybe even cryo, but I think that the T90 during fermentation gives you a really nice complex fruity character.
okay.
I just want to say that it's very refreshing that it's just you are winning gold medals and you don't have to like lean on, because I think a lot of brewers think that they need to like use the newest thing to like make a step up above others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like you are proving that that is not accurate.
Yeah. It's funny because I kind of think like that sometimes, and I'm like, hey, how do we make everywhere beers? How do we set them apart? And they need to be more intense, and they need to be more aromatic. And so we'll play with those products, but I don't know. I mean, granted, I use them in almost every West Coast IPA we make. I'm not fully convinced that they're making them any better. And I think some people are overdoing those products too, where you'll taste a beer and you'll know that it has too much advanced products in it, maybe even like a thiolized yeast or something, which is common in hazy IPA that I'm not a fan of. And you can just tell there's something else in there other than, yeah, the classic ingredients.
So just to hold on. Ugh, again. I'm getting ill. Let's not talk about me though. Let's talk about you. So what you're saying is like, what do you mean by like more products? Like you're like, I know how you can like play with them and whatnot, but like when do you know you've gone too far with,
Mhm.
with advanced products?
Advanced products. Yeah. You can just taste it in some beers where I think they add body and you'll almost get like this perceived sweetness, this body from using too much
Hmm.
like Incognito or Dynaboost at Knockout. You'll get these hop characters that don't feel fully natural, or they just feel a little more one-dimensional. And yeah, so I think that if you overdo them too much, you'll notice it in the final beer, and it'll come across as having, yeah, just this additional fake aspect to them.
Mm.
And not that it's fake, because those products are cool. And like I said, we like
Mhm.
to play with them. I think adding them during fermentation is really the trick, and you get more out of them, and they're not just a one-dimensional hop note. But I do think you just need to be careful with them.
Absolutely.
Cool. Obviously, everybody thinks of hops when they're talking about a beer like this, but particularly with a hazy IPA, malt plays a role. So, how do you think about your mash bill?
Yeah, so we run pretty straightforward recipe, nothing too crazy. 70% Pilsner, 30% uh, rolled oats.
Mm.
Um, we we have a mash filter here, so Mira 2001, which is kind of unique. I don't see a lot of breweries using them. So because of that, we do have to work our mash a little differently. Early on, when we were just mashing in at a saccharification rest, we were having a couple issues. One, the filter was clogging up a lot. It was really gummy, and we were essentially getting a stuck mash or a stuck filter, and that was a pain in the ass for us. We were also getting our beers were finishing a little too low in gravity, so 3 Plato and sometimes even lower. I think that is partially because of the milling process we use, and because our grist is so fine that we get a really good conversion really quickly. So since then, early on, I think just because of the filtration issues, we started using beta glucanase enzyme, and that kind of helped, but still didn't really do the trick. So for the last, it's been a while now, maybe 2 years, we've been mashing in at ambient temp, targeting 104 Fahrenheit for a beta glucan rest. Sometimes we'll come in a little lower, bump it up to 104, hold it there for 10 minutes. And then from there, we increase the mash straight to 170. So we increase by about 1 degree and 45 seconds, maybe about a degree a minute. And we'll go straight from 104 up to 170, and we'll never pause in that saccharification range. So we're really in that like 140 to 158 or 145 to 158 range for just about 10 minutes. And ever since we started doing that rest, we've been drastically increasing our lautering speed. And we've also been getting like a much nicer final gravity, which is more that sweet spot for us, which is about 4 Plato.
Ah,
4 to 4.5.
okay. No pun intended with sweet spot.
The sweet spot, yeah.
Very, very quickly, because you mentioned biotransformation, is there a yeast that you love to use in this beer style?
Yeah, we're using just the imperial juice yeast.
Okay.
Pretty common. A lot of people using it. Works well. It's pretty much all we do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, any advice for brewers who are looking to improve their hazy dippas? You know, I mean, you rattled off a lot of really good technical stuff there, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if there was anything else you wanted to share about people or like brewers, home brewers, just
No
drinkers in
mosaic.
general.
That's
No,
the
I guess
secret.
no mosaic.
Use Mosaic. I'm crazy. Um, any advice? I mean, we make a lot of hazy double IPA, so it's really, or hazy, just beer in general. So we're able to really taste things and make subtle tweaks here and there. And I think that really helps us.
Mhm.
I think that focusing on, hop quality and getting the right hops and the hops that are going to play well with hazy beers is important. Trying to avoid onion, garlic, anything too dank is a great place to start. Um, I don't know. Other than that, just pay attention to your process and don't fuck it up.
Fair.
Don't fuck it up.
I don't know. I mean, I kind of wish I had a better advice there, but
No, that's yeah.
pitch low pitch rate is nice.
Okay.
I like lower oxygen, even though Imperial recommends higher oxygen for juice. Low
Okay.
oxygen, much lower pitch rate than you think. I like to play with the small dry hop during fermentation. Obviously, harvesting first, that's important. Get a dry hop in with a little bit of fermentation and then hit it hard at the end of fermentation. And
Okay, that's a lot of good advice there. I like that. It's
Excellent.
actionable.
use good hops. That's
Use
hard.
good hops.
Sometimes that's hard when you're buying an ounce at a time from the homebrew store. I think that you're kind of you're taking a big risk, but maybe you can get hops from a friend or from a brewery. I don't know.
Yeah,
Fresh is best.
fresh
Keep
is
it
best.
fresh, high quality.
Fresh is best.
So, Stefan, before we let you go, can you share your social media handles?
Yeah, of course. So our Instagram is just Everywhere Beer Co. Look for us on there. Our website, everywherebeer.com. Yeah. Feel free to reach out on there, or if you want to shoot us an email, you have more questions, you can reach out to hello@everywherebeer.com, or technical questions can go to me. That's Stefan@everywherebeer.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
So, Em, are you thirsty?
Oh yeah, of course. Well, always. I love this episode because it shows how a style changes over time.
Yes.
And I love like the approach of like individual brewers, like what are they doing? How are they doing it? And I also want to say that it's really nice that like we can be like, hey, how do you do this? And then they're just like, here's the book.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
what industry is like that? That's
Yeah.
wild to me.
Yeah. We win gold medals, and here's how you can do it and make it harder for us to do it again.
Absolutely. Really great.
My big takeaway is that, everybody knows that it's hops in an IPA, but if you want to win gold medals, you think about the water profile too
Sure.
and all of that. And I just, yeah, this is what I've always been saying is the difference between good beer and great beer is a bunch of small things. And I think these our two guests really, really showed that.
For sure.
Awesome. Okay, so everybody, please visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And please visit allaboutbeer.com/support to support this show and others. If you have questions for the experts, please email podcast@allaboutbeer.com. That's also the email for feedback, suggestions, or to inquire supporting this show through advertising. And again, we are looking for sponsors for 2026. Em, how can people reach out to you?
I am at Pints and Panels across all social media. Well, not all. Blue Sky, Instagram, Facebook. There are
All
too
social
many.
media where you exist.
Yeah, yeah. My website is www.pintsandpanels.com. And what about you, Don?
I am at the Dawn of Beer on X, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram, and on Facebook I'm at the Beer Dawn. And people can always drop me an email. I love talking about beer. Dawn@thedawnofbeer.com. And again, instead of asking you to like and subscribe to the show, which we usually do, this time I'm going to remind you that we are actively looking for sponsors for this podcast for 2026. If you appreciate this show, please help us ensure we can continue to bring you great, insightful podcasts. And here is a final word from our sponsors for this year.
Hey friends, this is Andy Crouch at All About Beer. Let's take a second to thank our friends at Human Robot in Philly for their support of All About Beer. As one of our newest underwriters, Human Robot shows that it loves great words and pictures about beer as much as 10-ounce milk tubes of Czech-style Mliko pours, something they invented. With their focus on classic styles and most importantly great lager beer, Human Robot has understandably made a great name for itself. Join me in celebrating their luscious lagers and fine ales. And also, join Human Robot and the more than 25 other sponsors as part of the All About Beer community.
This program is brought to you by Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, where trailblazing runs in the family. From crafting a movement with their iconic pale ale to taking the IPA haze craze nationwide with Hazy Little Thing, it's an adventurous spirit you can taste in every sip. Find your next favorite beer wherever fine beverages are sold. With new brews for every season, there's always something to discover. Sierra Nevada Brewing Company. Still family-owned, operated, and argued over.
This show is produced by All About Beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com for articles, notes on this show and others, and to connect via the newsletter and social media. Cheers!
Cheers, everyone.